Alrighty, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Saturday, September 22nd, 2024. This is your afternoon tropical update. Today, we are watching our system in the Western Caribbean slowly take shape. Some organization, some more thunderstorm activity. No named storm yet, no organized storm just yet, but we have higher and higher confidence that we are going to see a tropical system develop in the next 24 to 36 hours, move northward from there, and then eventually move out into the eastern Gulf of Mexico as a tropical storm or a hurricane with impacts possible late this week. Models are trying to zero in somewhere in the Western Florida Panhandle, somewhere from Pensacola to about the Big Bend, but impacts could be felt and could seriously still get hit all the way down from Tampa over to Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi. No one's off the hook yet along the Gulf Coast besides probably central Louisiana through Texas. And I think deep South Florida probably going to escape any serious impacts from this one. But everyone else still on the hook. That's the big player in the Atlantic Basin today. We have some stuff coming off Africa and a small area of low pressure. Neither one of those have any chance to impact the U.S. anytime soon. This is our main player, and this is what we're talking about today. So, National Hurricane Center afternoon update, 80% chance of development in the next 7 days, and now 40% in the next 48 hours. That's rising pretty quick. I think we're maybe about 24 to about 30 something hours from a tropical depression being named. And we're probably even sooner from that, from having this at least as a tagged invest. So we're not even at the invest point just yet, but that is coming up pretty quick. So let's go and look at the satellite presentation here on the GO 16 imagery over on Tropical Tidbits. Visible presentation here today for you. Good look at our system this afternoon, and still broad area low pressure, broad cyclonic rotation in this region from our Central American gyre pattern. Now within this, it looks like something is consolidating on that more northeasterly kind of lobe, which is not shocking that we have a tighter low starting to form near the coast of Nicaragua and Honduras. We've had fairly consistent thunderstorm activity here, but it's not been able to anchor too long. We've still had wind shear kind of taking some of that convection away towards Jamaica, towards eastern Cuba. Now, what's happening is the upper trough that's dug way in here is starting to get cut off. It's starting to cut off by the jet stream. So the upper level winds will still be moving mass away from this area. It will still be causing large scale upward motion and lift, which thunderstorms like, but it won't be as destructive. So we think that given the warm waters, given the favorable environment, that we're going to see a low pressure system and a tropical depression or storm begin to form here in the next day or so as all this moves northward towards the Yucatan Peninsula or Western Cuba, some version thereof. And this should be in the channel between those two land masses by Wednesday morning. Now, as we like to talk about on this page, we have a couple different checkpoints. You know, what are the short-term checkpoints, medium-term checkpoints, and then the ultimate, like what's going to ultimately decide what this comes in as. Okay, the first checkpoint is from about here where the storm's likely to start forming to about here, Wednesday morning or Wednesday mid-morning, whenever this is getting near to the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, entering the Gulf of Mexico. What kind of storm gets on the Gulf Coast doorstep? That is going to be the first and very primary determination of how bad this may or may not be. Okay, GFS 12Z Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, shows a 969 millibar, probably category 3 hurricane already moving into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is a very high-end solution from the GFS. The GFS has been trending up with it, but the last 4 runs have been getting progressively stronger. But the GFS is really going to town on this. Now, I don't want to get into all the weeds of how these things organize and how the models see this, but the caution is we don't have a closed low yet. This is a very broadly rotating area right now, right? So sometimes what these computer models do is they think they see a small vortex in here and they go, oh, there's the storm. There it is. And then they take it and they run with it. But they don't always see it correctly. And oftentimes when they kind of make their own system up, like when they make their own vortex up, they kind of overdo what they make up for themselves. And then it's just a feedback of chain reaction of poor input equal poor output. So the model is very likely overestimating how strong this is. European model, for contrast, same time, same map, is showing 1,001 millibars, which is much higher pressure, meaning a much weaker storm. Probably a mid to mid strong tropical storm with some primitive eye wall features trying to get going near that northern tip of the Yucatan. Okay. That would be a little bit more believable. Probably something from that to maybe a bit stronger than the Euro, but then a bit weaker than what the GFS has. This is where ensembles come into play. We'll bounce over the weather nerds. We'll take the GFS ensembles and we'll back them up to 12Z on Wednesday, same time as that other map. And you can see the members for the GFS ensemble are not nearly down to the 960s. They're all about 980 something to mid 990s to low thousands. So all the GFS ensemble members say weaker than the deterministic run. So while this is probably overdoing it, it illustrates a first key checkpoint. If this storm, from where we have it right now, quote unquote, where its kind of early origins are to about the doorstep of the Gulf of Mexico, if it can already become a hurricane when it hits here, there's going to be a major hurricane strike on the U.S. Gulf Coast. Period. The end. End of discussion, no debate, just that's what's going to happen. If this is weaker, if it's more like a tropical storm, if it's kind of stumbling, if it's kind of sputtering, if it's lopsided, if it's still whatever, then we've got a chance at least to get this in as a weaker storm and maybe not have as much consequence. That's the first big checkpoint, okay? We got two other ones for you. The next one is going to be, what is the upper air pattern going into Wednesday? So what we know is that this is generally how the upper air pattern is going to look going into Wednesday. Now, this is upper levels. We're looking at the jet stream. We're looking at broad steering currents in the air above our heads that will help determine where our hurricane wants to go. Okay, we have a big ridge over the four corners, and we have the jet stream moving over into Canada and then dipping back down. However, the jet stream doesn't cut all the way down to the US. It's going to largely stay up in Canada. We have a very warm late season pattern here. Jet stream's elevated to the north. And the main players for our storm is going to be this cutoff low centered around northern Missouri, Iowa, kind of central eastern kind of plains. And what this is doing, it's cutting off from the jet stream. So the jet stream is not pushing this from east to west like it normally would. It's leaving it behind, meaning this low is just going to drift kind of to the south and be pulling wind like this. It's going to be moving wind from kind of the southwest to the northeast and generally imparting this kind of flow. Not super strong because, again, the jet stream energy is not piling in behind this. It's cut off. So it's just kind of spinning on its own, slowly meandering to the south. Over Florida, you're going to have a high pressure system kind of setting that eastern kind of edge to some degree or another. So if I draw the arrows like this, put our low back, our system down here is going to be moving up and likely going to just follow right through there. Some capacity of more north, bending more northeast. Now, I drew this over Mississippi, but it could be anywhere in this area. And the dance here is how this low moves to the south and east or south and west and how it sets up that opening for our storm to follow. Does it move more due south and push it more towards Florida? Does it move more southwest and let it kind of come more west? Does it tilt in a way that pushes it early? Does it push it late where it comes in and then curves faster? There's a whole lot of things at play. What we do have confidence in is up until about Wednesday, our models all say the same thing. NAM 3K, it's starting to get in that range. It's got the same pattern. Euro agrees. GFS agrees. Pretty good confidence this is the general setup. But then again, the specifics matter a lot. The timing, the turn, the speed, the angle, all that plays in. And when you have a cutoff low, that dance is very delicate. So unfortunately, this is going to be one of those storms that the steering pattern does matter and landfall points will change. Okay. The third thing is, what does the Gulf of Mexico look like from the perspective of intensity? We talked about where it wants to go, but how strong might it be? Again, depends heavily on how strong it is getting into the Gulf of Mexico. But what we do know is once it's in the Gulf, it's going to mostly have a big fat green light to do whatever the hell it wants. And that's not good. Tropical moisture here, 700, 300 millibar relative humidity back on tropical tidbits shows ample tropical moisture in the mid levels and a lot of tropical moisture swinging in from the Pacific. CAG patterns typically do this. They will tap moisture all the way from the Pacific Ocean and wrap it around. The storm will have very little issues with dry air. There will be some lurking in the Western Gulf, but without a strong upper trough to advect this into the storm, you're not going to have a lot of issues with dry air. European agrees. GFS and the Euro also show a very favorable upper air pattern. So we're up way high in the atmosphere now, talking about early Thursday as the storm's moving into the Gulf of Mexico. This isn't what you want to see. Upper low here, evacuating air out ahead of the storm, plenty of outflow, and then that outflow gets all the way back down to the Caribbean. This is a very, very good setup for a storm to quickly intensify. Upper high aloft, a trough nearby to help pull the air away but not be destructive. This is the analogy I've made here is this is like when you blow on a fire, like a campfire, and you want to get it going. If you blow on it really hard, it just goes and it just goes out, which is what wind shear kind of is for a hurricane. But if you gently blow on it and you give it just the right amount of air, it kind of gets going. Same, unfortunately, thing that might be happening here. We're going to have to watch this interaction very carefully, but we've seen this before this time of year. And upper ventilation right here with a closed low that's not strong enough to be destructive in terms of wind shear, but it's enough to kind of pull that air away could be an issue. Now, it could be strong enough to impart some westerly wind shear, and if the storm's weaker, it may not be able to resist it. But if it's already strong, I don't really care for what I'm seeing on this. And I think that a hurricane is very likely in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and we definitely cannot rule out a major hurricane strike at this time. But we should be preparing all the same. Okay, that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. Again, what we're talking about is generally the Western Florida Panhandle is under the most danger right now, like Pensacola to like Cedar Key kind of area. This is kind of like the dangerous zone, but there is still significant risk down to about the Tampa, maybe even Fort Meyers kind of area, and then all the way back to the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast. Again, all it takes is a little bit more of a trajectory change of that low for it to track more due north. If the low takes a bit different shape, it might push it more due west or due east rather. And then of course there's all those in between outcomes. And again, most of the ensembles are locking in the Florida Panhandle, but the specifics definitely remain to be seen. We're not going to be able to talk about specific who, what's, and where's just yet. Again, intensity, we can't really say much besides bet on a hurricane, and then it could be more than that. Jacksonville, too early to tell you guys what you may or may not be in for. It may be another miss. It might come right on top of you. We don't really know yet. Same thing over by the central Gulf Coast. A lot to play out with this, guys. But that's what I got for you today on your update. We are going to be following this all the way through. Hurricane hunters getting out there first thing in the morning. They're taking off here at Keesler this morning and tomorrow morning, and they're going to be in there nonstop throughout the week. So we'll be very busy with that. NOAA's going to be involved in this as well, getting their guys out there. We'll have more computer models running on it. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at it. But need to be lacing them up because it's going to be a week most likely. So we'll be tracking it every step of the way. So until then, stay safe. Thanks for watching and have a good one.